This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Shalom Aleichem. Bruchim Abayim to the International Shimru Hilchos Shabbos program. I want to thank Rabbi Brett and his partner for hosting tonight's event. And today, in our continuing Shimru program, we're going to learn about the 10th malacha. After Zoreya, Choresh, Koitzer, Ma'amer, Dash, Zoyre, Boirer, Toichin, Meraked, Losh. In a way, Losh is the malacha that comes up most frequently in the kitchen. Now, the first thing we need to know is, where was Losh used in the Mishkan? Well, there are two approaches. There's a machlokes where it was used in the Mishkan, and by the way, this machlokes applies to the first 11 malachos, which are called Sidura de Pas. The pshat of Rashi in Masechta Shabbos, Daf Mem Tes Amud Beis, and Rashi on Daf Ayin Gimel, Lush was necessary in the production of dyes to color the woolen coverings of the Mishkan. So this week's Parsha's Truma, and we know the curtains were made of Techeles, Argaman, Toilah Shani was red dye. Toilah Shani came from an herb that grew from the ground. How did it grow from the ground? Toisus and Chulin says on Peches Amud Beis that when Klal Yisrael were in the midbar flourished, and they were ground into powder. They were then mixed with water to produce a thick paste. Mixing the powder with the water is lush. That is the shita of Rashi. Rav Haigoin, quoted by Rabbi Avram ben Arambam, he says that lush was used in the midbar for the making, in the Mishkan, for the making of the lechem hapanim and the menachos. Wheat was ground into flour and then kneaded into dough. That's lush. Okay, what is the definition of lush? As we're going to see, the definition of lush is basically combining tiny particles into a solid or a semi-solid mass through a liquid medium, which is basically how dough is made. You take minute particles of flour, they melt, and they fuse together into a solid mass through the adding of water. So basically, lush is you take solid particles and you fuse them through the agent of water. The Rambam says if you are lush, if you need the size of a dry fig, a groigerus, you're chayiv. That's the av. The tolda is if you mix dirt and water together in the process of making bricks, that is the tolda of lush. So it's not only by food, but even in the production of bricks. And the Isurei D'Rabbanan is you cannot mix roasted flour with water, because you might come to mix unroasted flour. Or, if you have bran, which is not fit for kneading, you can't knead it because you might need something which is fit for kneading. Okay, now here is the machlokes you have to know and bear in mind. It's machlokes tanoim. Well, could you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I don't know if you're recording it.
You don't know if I'm recording it. Who's talking?
Avi.
No, I have my own. I'm recording it in many ways. Everything is recorded. Hakol b'sefer nechtavim. Everything is recorded everywhere. No, it's just not the cloud. The cloud isn't recording it, maybe.
Okay.
But you are now recorded for posterity on TorahAnytime.com. It's available. You're recorded for posterity on podcasts. Everyone on podcasts on Podbean or whatever it's called is going to know Rabbi Avi Yudekin. Also on Shas Illuminated, you will now be eternally etched into Shas Illuminated, and likely if the share is good, they'll put it on the OU website. So that's all. So you got to be careful if you chime in, because you never know what can happen. Fine. So the Gemara says like this. The Gemara says on Daf Yud Ches, a machloika brisa. Let's say one guy puts in flour, and after that another guy comes. So the first guy we're going to call him Ruvain, and the second guy we're going to call him Zavulon. Why? Just to keep you up. Okay? Zvulun comes along and he mixes in water. Rabbi says the second guy's chayiv. But what do you mean? Nobody mixed it. You don't have to mix it. The moment the water touches the flour fuses together even without mixing it. Yes, it mixes together, it fuses together better when it's mixed, no question. But when you merely add water to a soluble material, it fuses together. However, Rabbi Yossi says you're not chayiv until you mix. That's a machlokes Rabbi and Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi says you're chayiv merely for adding the water. Rabbi Yossi says that you're chayiv only if you mix it. Now let me jump ahead to something very important. And that is, lahalacha, we're going to aser both. Which means as follows. Most Rishonim paskin like Rabbi Yossi, that you're only chayiv if you mix it. However, the Chumash Hadeshen paskins like Rabbi, that you're chayiv merely for adding the water. If you look in the Mishnah Brura on Siman Shin Chaf Aleph, the Sivkata Nun, the Mishnah Brura says, Roiv Paiskin paskin like Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda, namely the Rif, the Rambam, the Rosh, the Razah, and the Ran. The opinion of the Truma, Bala Trumais, is to paskin like Rabbi. The Minog, by the way, is we're machmir. Even though most Rishonim say you're only chayav for Losh if you need it. Okay, when I say need, I don't mean N-E-E-D, I mean K-N-E-A-D, right? When you mix it. So most Rishonim paskin like Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, that you're only chayiv if you mix it. However, the Baal HaTruma is paskins like Rabbi, and the Mishnah Brura says the minog is to be machmir. Mishnah Brura can be found in Siman Shin Chav Dalet Sivkata and Yud Aleph. The minog is to be machmir like the svara of the Baal HaTruma, to be machmir like Rabbi Yossi. Now, there's another interesting machlokes. And that is, aside from whether you're chayav for mixing in the water, or only if you mix it, or only if you actually need it, within the shita of Rabbi Yossi, who says you're chayav only if you mix it, maybe that's only talking about, Abaye says, flour, which is something that is mixable. Meaning, we know flour, when water comes into contact with the flour, it causes the particles of flour to fuse together into some kind of paste, into dough. But there are things that even with the agent of water, the materials do not fuse together. Those things, since anyway mixing doesn't really do anything, maybe Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda would agree that if you merely add water, that you're chayev. So in other words, there's a concept of bar gibel, lav bar gibel, and this is mentioned in Masechta Shabbos and Daf Yirches and Daf Kufnun Hey Amud Beis. Bar gibel means very fine particles that dissolve and fuse together easily when they're in contact with water. Powder, fine sand, instant potato flakes, baby cereal. So these things, they are bar givul, and you would, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda would say you're chayiv if you mix them. By the way, the Rav Moshe has a tshuva. Are you allowed to prepare instant mashed potatoes on Shabbos? What you do is you take this potato powder, you pour water, you mix it. Rav Moshe says, no, that's Losh da'iraisa. This is something that is bar gibel, is easily mixable, and you mix it, you're definitely chayiv. The question is, in Rabbi Yossi, who holds you're only chayiv if you actually mix it, what if it's something that's not really mixable? It's because it's very large, or it's non-degradable, and the particles will still be recognizable, although they may cling together like sand, ash. So there are poskim that say, Abaye is of the opinion that for that type of item, all you have to do is pour in water and you'll be chayiv. You don't have to mix it. However, Rabbi Yosef disagrees, and he says, according to Rabbi Yosef, you're only chayiv if you then mix it. Okay, you're only chayiv if you then mix it. Then the Gemara says a very important thing, because we mentioned that in Rabbi holds that you're chayiv if you merely add water to something which will fuse together. If you add water to flour, you're chayiv for Losh. And the Gemara says that the following. Gemara daf kuf nun vav amud aleph. V'shavin, both Rabbi and Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Huda, they both agree. Sheboichashen es hashtis b'Shabbos. You're allowed to mix roasted barley with honey on Shabbos, or v'shoisim zeisim. You could drink Egyptian beer. But the Gemara asks, what do you mean? I thought you're not allowed to knead on Shabbos. Va'amred ein goivlin. Says Gemara, loy kasha haba ava haba raka. You know when you're not allowed to mix, that's if it's a very coarse mixture. But if it's a very loose mixture, when you're mixing water into the flour, so it becomes a very coarse mixture, it becomes a semi-solid, a mush, so then you're chayiv on Shabbos. But if it's a very loose mixture, if there's so much water added that it's still very liquidy, then you are allowed to add that kind of liquid on Shabbos. However, the Gemara says you need to do a shinoi. What kind of shinoi? If during the week you first put in the vinegar and then you put in the barley, then on Shabbos you put in the barley and then you put in the vinegar. So from here we learn that even according to Rabbi, who holds that by merely adding a liquid to a soluble item, it is asur, that's only if it's a coarse consistency. But if it's a loose consistency, it is mutter, as long as you do a shinoi, meaning you change the order that it is put in. Now again, who do we paskin like? Do we paskin like Rabbi, that merely adding water to soluble material is lush, or do we paskin like Rabbi Yossi, that you have to actually mix it? So we have the psak of the Chumash Hadeshen. Chumash Hadeshen says, Vinira, it would seem limtzai heter l'kuliyama, that we could find the leniency according to everyone, that according to Rabbi, that merely adding liquid is a problem. If you make it very liquidy, it's not considered lush. And plus you change the order. What about according to Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda? According to him, if you mix it, it's going to be a problem. So says the Chumash Hadeshen, even if you're going to make a very fine and loose mixture, you should do a shinoi, and that you should not use a kli to mix it, but use your finger to mix it. In other words, like this. In the world of Rabbi, where merely adding water to something is an issue, so the way you get around that is you add a lot of liquid. This way you make it liquidy. And you change the order. If you normally put in the flour, so first put in the water. And in the world of Rabbi Yossi, that nothing is violated until you actually mix. So in this case, the way to get around mixing is to use a shinoi in the mixing, namely you use your finger. Now, here is... Let's cut right to the chase. What do I mean, let's cut right to the chase? If you have a semi-solid dip, you have avocado, and you want to mix like a liquid to it, you want to mix lemon juice into it, that would seem to be somewhat problematic. How are you going to mix the lemon juice? Because you're basically using the lemon juice to cause the pieces of avocado to fuse together and form somewhat of a different consistency. Certainly you're causing the lemon juice to be of a thicker consistency. So that could potentially be an issue. What about to mash an avocado or a banana without adding any liquid. After all, once you start mashing the banana or the avocado, the natural liquid of the avocado or the banana will come out and will start mixing with the banana and the avocado, and that potentially could be lush. So the Chazon Ish says that he's inclined to say that if the liquid that you're using is the natural liquid of the fruit or the vegetable, that's not considered lush. And by the way, Rav Moshe says that explicitly. That if you want to mash an avocado, or you want to mash a banana and use its own liquid as the liquid agent to cause the particles to fuse together, Rav Moshe paskins, as the Chazon Ish is inclined to say, that is completely permitted. Okay? So, as long as you're not using an external liquid. But the question is, when you bring in an outside liquid, what do you do with the lemon juice and the avocado? So, based on what we learned, the way to do that would be to apply a lot of liquid, change the order that you put it in, and mix it either with your finger or in a crisscross motion. So basically, there are three ingredients that are needed to get out of any problem of lush. Namely, you want to make it bli lasai raka. You want to make it very loose. Number 2, you want to change the order that things are put in. And number 3, in the mixing, you want to do the mixing in a unusual way. Namely, you want to use your finger. You want to, or use a crisscross motion. So what I would like to do is speak out probably the most, I'm going to veer off from the sheets today. Even though just for your Yedias HaShabbos, the sheets sort of end off with an interesting machlokes between Rav Moshe and Rav Shlomo Zalman. If you want to mix ketchup and mayonnaise on Shabbos, what does ketchup and mayonnaise produce? I don't know, Russian dressing or something? I don't know, something like that. Yeah, so if you're going to mix lemon juice into ketchup, you can't really do that because you're causing the lemon to get a thicker consistency. But here you're taking two pastes, each one is already mixed, to mix them together. So if one paste is thick and the other is loose, so you're going to make a thick consistency out of the two, that's for sure asur. But even if both pastes have a thick consistency, let's say a ketchup and lemon juice, ketchup and mayonnaise, Rav Shlomo Zalman says you can't do that. Rav Moshe says, nah, you're allowed to do that. They're already of the same consistency. Nothing's really happening when you mix the two together. But what I would like to speak about is probably the most common example of lush. And by the way, the malacha of lush cannot be mastered here in a half hour. As good as our group is, and we have a very chashuv membership here in the Shimru, lush is something you could spend 3 months on, not 30 minutes. But I want to talk about, I guess today what we're getting is some of the basic concepts, namely the machlokes Rabbi and Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi holds merely adding liquid is a problem. Rabbi Yossi holds only if it's mixed. You have, within the world of Rabbi Yossi, it's only if it's mixed. Maybe you would still be chayiv if it's something that doesn't mix well. We learned that in Rabbi there is a leniency if you do something called bli lasai raka, a very loose consistency, provided that you switch the order. But you also have to get around the problem in Rabbi Yossi about the mixing, so you're going to mix either with your finger or in a crisscross motion. And here's the big shaila. The shaila is, many people like to eat chopped liver or egg salad on Shabbos. So, can you make egg salad or chopped liver on Shabbos? That's the question. So what's the problem? You're taking an egg, you're grinding it very finely, yeah? You're putting mayonnaise into it, and the mayonnaise is now bond. Now, if you chop and dice the egg finely, the mayonnaise is basically taking small particles and fusing them together. This is classic lush. Making egg salad on Shabbos is classic Losh. So if you don't want to add the mayonnaise, go ahead. Just have like dry eggs and some civil, some onions. But most people like mayonnaise in their eggs. So what do you do? What do you do with your eggs on Shabbos? So, the best thing to do. Now, if you grind it very finely, many people either put in mayonnaise or they put in oil. Either one is an issue of lush. So to avoid any shilos, don't chop the eggs or the liver finely. Make it big pieces. By the way, I happen to like big chunks in my egg salad. Why am I telling you this? It's because I feel so close with you that I'm sharing with you all these halachas. I want to tell you my personal preferences of egg salad. But when you chop it very lumpy, it's not called b'li lasai ava. It's not a thick mixture because you're not really fusing together the particles. Basically, each particle is by itself. This piece of egg is Ruvain, the other piece of egg is Shimon, and they're not fusing together to become one big mishpacha. They remain in identity. There's some gooey mayonnaise sticking in between them. So if you chop it coarsely, then it's not susceptible to lush. You can mix oil, you can mix mayonnaise, and you have no issues, and you could eat your egg salad without feeling guilty. That I like the egg salad, but Glatstein said on Thursday at 2:30 that there's an issue of lush in making the egg salad. This way you could eat without any charata, without any guilt. Guiltless egg salad is coarse egg salad. However, some people say, are you kidding me? I don't eat my egg salad coarse. I mean, are you Jewish? That's not how you eat Jewish egg salad. Jewish egg salad is finely ground. That's the way they ate it in the Alta Haim. That's the way my Elta Baba ate it, and that's the way I'm going to eat it. So, what do you do if you want finely ground egg salad? You know what you do? You make it before Shabbos. See, then by the time Shabbos comes, it's going to be spoiled. No, it's not. You seal it in a Ziploc, in a Glad container, or in an airtight container. You put it in the fridge, and in most cases it will remain perfectly fresh. So you say, whoa, wait a second, doesn't the Gemara say in Nida and Daf Yud Zayin that 5 things, if you do it, you're liable for your own life? And one of them is if you eat a peeled egg overnight. That if you peel an egg and you leave it overnight, it's dangerous to eat it the next day. So if you're going to make egg salad before Shabbos, so you're violating this Gemara in Nida. So, there are a few ways around this. Number one, the fact that you chopped up the egg and you added other ingredients, oil, salt, pepper, Rav Vosner says that gets out of the issue of eating a peeled egg that was left overnight. Number two, many poskim hold that a cooked egg is not subject to the prohibition of a peeled egg. There's also another opinion that an egg in a sealed container that's left overnight is also not subject to the prohibition of eating a peeled egg overnight. But between these 3 leniencies, number 1, you have added ingredients. Number 2, it's cooked. Number 3, it's sealed. You have nothing to worry about with your egg. So either the best eitzah is chunky egg salad. The next base eitzah is egg salad prepared before Shabbos. If you didn't prepare before Shabbos, and you are a stickler for your finely chopped egg salad or liver, there is still a way to do it. Number 1, reverse the order. If, let's say, usually you add the liquid to the salad, if you first put oil and mayonnaise and then the egg salad, reverse it. If you first put in the egg salad and then the mayonnaise, reverse. Reverse it how you usually do it. And number 2, don't mix it like that. Mix it crisscross. So you say that's awkward. It's better to be awkward than violating lush. I'm telling you. You're better off having an awkwardly... Nobody could taste the awkwardness in the egg salad. So, again, the best eitzah is make it chunky. The second best eitzah is make it before Shabbos. The third eitzah is reverse the order and crisscross. Let's say you don't like chunky. You don't want to make it before Shabbos, and you will not mix your egg salad in a crisscross motion, and you still want to make egg salad. Is there anything to rely on? There is. There are some poskim that say that Losh does not apply by something that doesn't grow from the ground. The Eglei Tal is of the opinion that something that doesn't go from the ground, there's no prohibition of Losh. Secondly, some say something which is cooked, there's no Isser of Losh. Some say anything needed for that meal, it's called little by little, and there's no Isser of Losh. Should you rely on that? No. You shouldn't rely on that. But if you see somebody do that, it doesn't mean they should not be considered for shidduchim. But there's what to rely on, but it's a little shade. I would call it, you're not standing on terra firma. It's not really a very strong reliability. So the best way to make your egg salad is chunky egg salad on Shabbos. Next best, do it on Friday. Next best, reverse the order and crisscross motion. And if you go to someone's house and they're making their egg salad like they do during the week, don't throw rotten tomatoes on them. There might be reason for basis, based on the fact that Losh does not apply to something that doesn't grow from the ground, and something that's cooked, and something at the meal. But it's better to take advantage of the loopholes that we mentioned in the beginning. Okay, thank you everybody for joining us.
Be the same?
What?
Would tuna fish be the same as egg salad?
I would think, in other words, either make it chunky, which I think tuna is easier to make chunky. I'm not a big tuna fan anyway, you know.
Okay.
Tuna fish is like in the old shul by Shalosh Sudis. They had the crusty tuna fish that they made last Tuesday, you know. But tuna fish also. If you want to make it very fine, make it Friday. You want to make it on Shabbos, then keep it coarse. You want to make it fine, so then reverse the order. Yeah, l'chara tuna fish is the same. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Afreilichem Purim. Next Thursday is Tainus Esther, so you're off. And we'll continue after Purim. Haba Aleinu L'Tova. Wishing everyone a Freilichen Purim. And
Glatstein, I won't be able to eat Shiur live tonight. It's a bit late in the night.
tonight, what Shiur? There is no Shiur tonight.
No Shiur tonight. Was it last night about Purim?
Oh, it's you could listen to it now.
Okay.
Okay, Kol Tov, everyone. Kol Tov. Bye bye.
Shabbos.
Shabbos, good Shabbos.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.